I'm Denha, and you're watching FYI. For nearly 5 decades, trains have been making a stop in the Ann Arbor area as travelers hop on for a tour of the many varieties of model trains. Passengers had their tickets ready as they boarded the annual train show and sale at Saline Middle School.
We have about 100 different vendors come in. We fill up over 300 tables. We have several layouts and even a train you can ride on. That's a large-scale train. It's referred to as live steam.
We have this layout. It's a traveling layout. It consists of modules. The members build individual modules. They all have a standard interface so that we can plug them into one another and we create layouts like this.
I am debuting a new building. It's called the Cadillac Tower from downtown Detroit. There's also the Griswold building. Mary Martha Stewart Chapel from the Henry Ford, Greenfield Village.
All the conductors share a desire for this childhood pastime thriving into adulthood.
The set dressing makes all the difference in the world. You know, so each and every one of our members adds something exceptionally valuable when they come together as a collective.
For me, it's the artwork. I'm in this for the art. I do a lot of the scenery. I build scenery, I build buildings, I do painting, I do things like that.
I think there's just an inherent appeal about trains, and it was a toy that was available. And there's nostalgia that's part of it at this point. People will buy trains that remind them of their childhood, and it's tangible. It's not the app on the phone where you're buying something with coins and then you said, oh, I'm kind of done with that. The trains are still there, and you can go back to them and recreate stuff.
This yearly fundraiser supports the Ann Arbor Model Railroad Club and their headquarters, Dexter Depot. For more, visit aamrc.org. Stay tuned, and we'll be back shortly with more news and information. When you think of images of vampires and Dracula, bats most likely come to mind. And now you can visit a place right here in Ann Arbor to get up close and personal with these winged mammals and learn that they aren't so scary after all. The Organization for Bat Conservation closed their doors. But when the bats had to find a new place to call home, Leslie Science and Nature Center was a place of refuge.
We accumulated up to 20 of their native and non-native bat species.
Bats of all species have a positive impact on the ecosystem.
If we want to think locally, these guys are kind of like nature's insect control. If you want to think globally, however, fruit bats are amazing pollinators. They'll pollinate things like agave, mango, avocados, certain trees that they find in their native habitats. And without those bats there, those fruits wouldn't be able to reproduce. We are really excited to be able to promote and offer these programs to continue that conservation message of not only why bats are important, but how we humans can better interact and protect all different kinds of species. For more on bat programming, visit LeslieSNC.org. As the weather changes, we'll see more and more people walking to their next destination. But as pedestrians, there are some safety tips you should keep in mind as you travel around the area. Learn about the responsibility of the pedestrian in this month's City Roundup in 60.
Hi, I'm Officer Jamie Adkins with the Ann Arbor Police Department, and I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about pedestrian safety. Now, we all know here in the city of Ann Arbor, vehicles are supposed to stop for pedestrians at crosswalks. However, here are some tips that you can do as a pedestrian to help keep yourself safe when crossing the street. Make sure that you stand clear of bushes, of buses, of parked cars, garbage cans, so that drivers are able to see you at the crosswalk. Also, at night, make sure you're wearing bright colored clothing or reflective materials so that you're more readily visible to vehicles. And also make sure that you're crossing in well-lit areas. Be careful at crossings. Cross streets at marked crosswalks or intersections. Obey traffic signals such as walk and don't walk signs. Look left, look right, look left again when you're crossing, just like you were taught in kindergarten. Most importantly, look across all lanes of traffic and visually clear each lane before crossing. And lastly, put away those smartphones and pay attention to where you're crossing. Thank you, and keep yourself safe.
As the future takes hold and time changes, it becomes harder and harder to understand the pressures our kids feel on a regular basis. More children and teens are coping with anxiety, and there is help. Joining me is Dr. Aimee Kotrba, owner of Thriving Minds. Welcome to the show, Aimee.
Thanks so much for having me.
Can you tell me a little bit about your background and what led you towards like the teen children anxiety angle?
I got my PhD at Wayne State in Detroit and then opened a private practice just myself in 2007. I actually came out of graduate school intending to work with kids with autism, but I sort of serendipitously fell into working with kids with selective mutism, which is a really specific kind of childhood anxiety. And I just really liked working with the families. The kids are fun and creative and smart and interesting, and the parents are usually desperate to figure out how to help their kids. And so I've since very much focused on treating anxiety instead.
And so the one you're talking about is sort of a genetic, you're born with that, or?
Yeah, so anxiety can come either from neurological reasons, so there are parts of our brain that predispose us to having anxiety. There's a genetic piece to it. It does run in families. And then we know it's modeled. You know, it can be modeled by parents, it can be modeled by peers or siblings. So it's usually a mix of those three.
Can you tell us a little bit about Thriving Minds and what kind of services people can get there?
Yeah. So I opened Thriving Minds about 7 years ago. And right now there's 2 locations. There's one in Chelsea and one in Brighton. And between the 2, I have 16 therapists that work for me. And we use something called cognitive behavioral therapy, which is the research-based intervention for kids and teens and adults with anxiety. So we see all ages. In Brighton, we only see kids and adolescents. In Chelsea, we also see adults there. And we see anxiety, we see other kinds of disorders, and we see ADHD and behavioral issues and depression, but anxiety definitely tends to be the most frequent reason that people come into our clinic.
How big of an issue is it at this point? Do you have stats on it, or just?
I mean, I would say it's an epidemic at this point. About 1 in 8 kids and teenagers would be diagnosed at any moment with an anxiety disorder. Unfortunately, only about 80% of those kids actually get treatment. So there's a number of kids who are not getting treatment of any kind.
Is it because like you don't necessarily know what's wrong, or like you don't see symptoms of it, or that it's internalized?
I think that some of it is that people don't see the symptoms of it. Some of it is that kids with anxiety are not squeaky wheels, right? They tend to be really well behaved. They tend to be really smart and do well in school. And then I think that there's probably some access to service issues, that parents don't know where to go for effective treatment, or don't know how to access services at all. And then I think schools sometimes don't recognize it because those aren't the kids that are standing out in the classroom.
And you see it more so in teens than children?
You see a mix in both. So statistically, kids are about as statistically likely to have anxiety as teens are. The difference that you really see between the two are kids are more likely to have generalized anxiety disorder. So those are just the general worriers. They worry about a little bit of everything. Teenagers are much more likely to have social anxiety. So performance fears, concerns about how their peers view them. That's much more common in teenagers.
So let's say I'm a parent of a teen, and what maybe would be some of the symptoms that you would notice as a parent?
I think in both teenagers and in kids, one of the first things that parents notice is the physical symptoms. Kids with anxiety are more likely to complain of headaches, Stomach aches are a huge issue with kids with anxiety. They tend to have sleep problems, really tense muscles, so their backs will be sore. They'll complain of racing heart. They'll voice a lot of worries, a lot of unhelpful thoughts. It's normal to be worried about things, but these are worries that don't go anywhere. They just continue to perpetuate and repeat. And I think the number one thing that parents tend to see is avoidance. So avoidance is, we say avoidance fuels the fire of anxiety. Kids get anxious about something and they do what we all do when we're anxious, which is they try to get out of it, right? They try to avoid what they're afraid of. And parents might notice that in terms of not wanting to go to school, not wanting to go to extracurricular activities, not wanting to be involved socially anymore. These kids kind of pull back from life to some degree.
And why do you feel like it's an epidemic now in 2019?
That's a good question. I think that there's so many facets that we could blame as a part of it. I think if I had to break it down, it's two main things. I think that we tend to overprotect our kids, and then I think we tend to overpressure our kids. Overprotection, I think that we tend to step in and rescue kids much too quickly. You know, when they feel discomfort, we feel discomfort, and so we try to step in and we make it easier, or we tell them they don't have to worry about doing that, or we protect them in some way. What that accidentally does, though, is it teaches the child first that they don't have the wherewithal to do what they're afraid of doing. It does not build confidence. And secondly, it teaches them that next time this happens, I need somebody to do it for me, or I need to just figure out a way to not do it. And then the overpressure piece, you know, social media plays such a huge role, especially in teenagers' lives, and it perpetuates this idea of perfection that's completely unattainable, completely unreasonable, but it's in their face all the time. And so they believe that they need to try to attain this perfection, whether it's by overstudying or checking their appearance all the time or being a social butterfly, and they're inevitably going to fail because nobody's perfect, and that leads, I think, to anxiety as well.
Are there solutions that you can do sort of at home, or like if you notice these signs, should you reach out for help from a medical professional?
Well, I always encourage parents to reach out to a psychologist if they're concerned about anxiety, because we know with research that anxiety is really very treatable. There's a lot of research showing that cognitive behavioral therapy can effectively treat about 80% of kids who come into treatment. And so things that we would do with the cognitive behavioral therapy are things that parents can do at home. One of them is teaching kids how to identify their thoughts and emotions. So teaching them about anxiety and what it is, and when they feel it, how to notice it. We teach them about their brain. There's a part of our brain called the amygdala, and it's sort of like the guard dog of our brain. And its only job is to protect us. And so it does that really, really well. Its job is not to make us happy or help us to try new things. Its only job is to protect us. And so when it thinks that we're in any kind of danger, it alerts us that we're in imminent danger, and we react to it. Right? That's when we get those physical symptoms that we have. And for kids with anxiety, their amygdala is really overreactive. So part of our job as parents or as psychologists is to teach them that that might be a false alarm. When you feel anxious, it doesn't mean that you're in imminent danger. What it is a false alarm. And if we know that it's a false alarm, and we can even predict, like, I'm going to have a false alarm today when I go to soccer, then we have more power over it. We can ignore it. We don't have to act upon it. So that's a piece of it. Then the other part that parents and psychologists can do is really having kids experience the discomfort of anxiety. And it makes sense that the only way that we can get over fears is to face them. And so our job as psychologists is to kind of in small little doses help a child experience the anxiety in a way that's reasonable for them, of course. And it teaches them sort of like whenever we face a fear, usually you come out the other side going, it really wasn't that bad. Yeah, I can handle that, and it builds confidence for them.
So a lot of it is just training the brain to be like, okay, you're going to feel these things. And I think like all of us in some times in our lives feel anxiety.
Absolutely.
But it's dependent on how you're going to let that anxiety, you're going to tackle it. So like I know I feel anxiety here and there, but it's not a regular basis. I don't feel it on a regular basis. But I know when I feel it, I'm telling myself like, it's fine. Just
go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
Go ahead and do it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's like kind of the key to it, is just training them to be like, it's okay.
Yes.
You can get past this.
Yeah, we talk about teaching kids to be comfortable with discomfort. That's one of the best things that you can do for your child, because it helps build confidence, it helps build grit. We're both going to be uncomfortable at times in our life, and that's going to happen for the rest of our lives. But if we can teach kids that when I feel uncomfortable, I can do it anyway, it's really empowering for them.
And so before we go, are there any resources out there?
Yeah, I have to point out our clinic. I think that we have fantastic therapists there who can be really effective in helping kids. We do a lot of parent training at our clinic because we want parents to model what we want the kids to feel. You know, if you're in an airplane and you feel some turbulence, you always look first to the flight attendant. And if the flight attendant looks calm, everything's okay. If the flight attendant looks panicked, I'm pretty sure I'm going to die.
Yeah.
And kids do the same things. They're looking to their parents to try to figure out if this is a situation where they're in danger or if everything's okay. And so we try to teach parents how to remain calm on the outside, no matter how they're feeling inside, remaining calm on the outside, because it really shows the kids everything's okay out here. We're okay. There's some books that I really enjoy. One of them is a book series called the What to Do book series, and they have a bunch of different ones. There's what to do when you worry too much, what to do when your brain gets stuck. There's one about perfectionism. There's a lot of them, but they're really cute workbooks for kids kind of 7 to 13 years old that walk you through how to identify anxiety, how to control your thoughts when it comes to anxiety, how to practice being brave. And my favorite book for parents is one called Anxious Kids, Anxious Parents. It's by Reed Wilson, and it's just a really good book on the vast influence that parents have on helping their kids to be brave. It's an empowering book.
All right, well, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
For more on this and other programs, visit a2gov.org/CTN. Visit youtube.com/CTN Ann Arbor to see all that CTN has to offer. And remember to like, comment, and share. Thanks for watching, and tune in next time to FYI.